Invincible has a wide array of heroes who all do their part in keeping society safe against crime and terror, but how effective would they be in the world of One Punch Man, where brutish monsters are as fast as they are deadly? Let's find out which heroes of Invincible would reach the top of the Hero Association, and which heroes would be scrapping it out in the lower leagues. We'll be going by the popular Amazon Prime series of Invincible for our tierings, which are as follows. C class, for heroes like Moomin Rider. Even disaster level wolf monsters known to fight against C-class heroes are typically bulletproof, which should already set the standard for the dangers to expect in these cities. B-class, for heroes like Mizuki, while they can usually defeat wolf level monsters alone, a few of these are generally needed to tackle disaster level tiger threats which are capable of shattering asphalt, digging through concrete, and even penetrating steel. A-class is where names start to get made. Heroes like Stinger are usually enough to defeat disaster level Tiger alone, and he's even been able to make himself fly through sheer physical force by twirling his spear. Some of these heroes are as fast as lightning, can slice through bullets mid-air, and perform instantaneous attacks which can kill dozens of bulletproof enemies in an instant. These guys might not look amazing next to the S-class, but in a vacuum, they're serious. A My Mask is the next tier. Yes, you don't get through to S-Class these days unless it's through a My Mask. Ever since he came in, it's his goal to stop unworthy heroes breaking into the S-Class. So this is for those who may have been strong enough to enter the ranks before a My Mask's influence. However, with him now here, even those who may be stronger than S-Class's lowest ranks may be barred if they cannot meet Amai's recent gatekeeping standards. This means if someone in this video doesn't make it to S-Class, but you think they'd beat Tank Top Master, it's not because you're not right, it's because a My Mask changed the recruitment process. And finally, the S-Class. If you can reliably defeat demon level monsters who hold the power to move above massively hypersonic speeds in battle, can punch through missile shelters like they're paper, and even survive mounting, erasing explosions, then perhaps you really do belong here. Incredible power, speed, skill, and durability is required, and anything less will see you overwhelmed by the fierce monsters opposing you at this level. With all that said, heroes of Invincible, let's see where you'll end up going by your Amazon Prime performances. First, we have Darkwing, and he's kinda like Batman, except just without the multiversal levels of prep time, and without that, well, he's going to be in trouble for this tier list. From what we saw, he's a peak ordinary human combatant who has the skills to pay the bills. However, with characters like Moomin Rider essentially being the equivalent to super soldiers like Captain America, this puts Darkwing in a tough spot when characters stronger and faster than him are still swinging for the hills in C-Class. With even disaster level wolf monsters being bulletproof and having supernatural levels of strength, it's going to be tough for Darkwing to gather much momentum in this world since almost all levels of monster can shrug off his equipment and will not be hurt by his physical attacks. The cold fact of the matter is most of Darkwing's battles against monsters in One Punch Man are going to look like his performance against Omni Man, and if that's the case, C-Class is where his limited physicality and underwhelming arsenal will keep him. Now he can hide in the shadows literally and within the hero rankings. Darkwing 2 on the other hand does fairly better. Not only does his exoskeleton allow him to fight more effectively against superhuman opponents than his mentor, but that tricky little Shadowverse ability of his will certainly come in handy. With his enhanced physicals mixed in with the power to condemn monsters into eternal imprisonment within the Shadowverse, Darkwing 2 will be able to get a lot of work done on wolf and tiger level monsters by the nature of his special power alone. For this, I'd grade him in A-Class, primarily because of the Shadowverse itself. However, this will be the highest he can go. You see, once you get to the realm of demon level monsters, this will no longer work. All monsters at this level will be too strong for even Darkwing 2 to push or pull into those portals of his. Someone like Deep Sea King, for example, who is a low or mid-tier demon threat at best, would not only have enough strength to easily resist Darkwing 2, but would also be able to completely overwhelm him in speed. And what makes matters worse is that a monster like Deep Sea King would be capable of defeating him in a single blow or two should he desire. The Shadowverse can hacks through many monsters expected within C and B class territory, but once the serious threats show up, he'd have no way to shift them into his portals, nor would he have the speed or durability to keep up. Someone who would be able to defeat the likes of Deep Sea King, however, is Omni Man. Whether or not Nolan is truly fast enough to match combat speeds of such a level, since the Invincible show indicates that he either cannot or can, but unreliably, what's more reliable is the impressive strength strength of high tier Viltrumites like Nolan. Even with disadvantages such as hand-to-hand speed against him, it's very reasonable to suggest that Nolan would be able to bring down a variety of demon level threats with his brute strength, flight, and ruthless aggression. The key to Nolan finalizing a spot in S-Class lies in his ability to withstand the body-breaking power of demon level threats. They'll definitely be hitting him, and hitting him hard, but the Viltrumite body should withstand long enough to seal the deal for many monster encounters, even when his combat speed is inferior. Added, many monsters usually think too highly of themselves to even consider dodging in the first place, which only heightens Nolan's ability to deliver monster splattering strikes. It's S-Class for Omni-Man.
But you already know that.
However, to relate back to the durability point and how it's important, I'll pull the Immortal up next. This is another very strong individual. He can pack a punch and take a few in return, except there's a reason why he's called the Immortal and not the Invincible. Immortal's biggest problem when it comes to fighting demon level threats of One Punch Man will be his suspect durability and combat speed. To use Deep Sea King again as my happy gatekeeper, Immortal has never demonstrated the ability to move in battle as fast as this middling demon level threat. To put it into perspective without getting too deep in the weeds of power scaling, since this is a fairly casual video, Deep Sea King's attack movement is around the speed of Red Rush himself, and we know for a fact that Red Rush is so fast that the Immortal looks slow in comparison. Now imagine Deep Sea King throwing the amount of punches Red Rush could, but with the level of power from a monster like him. Immortal's body is not going to hold up after a few of those if we go by his showings in the Amazon Prime series. Hell, he even got downed for half a minute after a Mauler twin threw him into a beam. The saving grace for Immortal is, truly, that I think he has enough power in his hands to defeat many demon level threats. So I'm not saying he wouldn't be able to kill some of them. The difference between someone like him and Nolan though, is Nolan can tank their hits long enough to finally turn the tide. However, the Immortal is probably going to weaken or completely break down before finding his comeback. So it's not that I don't think he could be argued for S-Class, since I think despite lacking in some areas, he can make up for it with some appropriate matchups. My thing is a My Mask is not going to be so impressed with his up and down performances against threats expected to be within S-Class's comfort zone. Unfortunately, the Immortal would get a My Masked due to the inconsistency of his performances against disaster level demon threats, primarily for his inferior combat speed and decent yet still underwhelming durability. Moving on, we're looking at Duplicate. Now, while she might be S-Class for taking a shower with, most monsters of One Punch Man aren't too interested in 3, 4, or 5-somes. Jokes aside, I actually do think Duplicate is a pretty skilled fighter with some decent showings for someone who isn't particularly superhuman outside of her cloning ability. But the issue for her is just that 5, 10, 15, or even 50 duplicates aren't going to be damaging the majority of monsters. Individually, she's just a regular peak human or so who can fight well, which means while she'd probably kick Conor McGregor or Khabib Nurmagomedov's butt with a handful of clones, all her strikes are just going to be bouncing off wolf or tiger level monsters for the most part, which will see her duplicates treated like human cheese string the same way they are in Invincible. I'm going with C-Class personally. If she's constantly getting torn up in Invincible, it's only gonna be worse here. Shrinking Ray has a pretty neat ability though, so maybe she'll do better. Well, at least that's what you'd think until you remember that she's not got any real oomph behind her either at this level. You'd be forgiven for thinking she could beat some monsters by shrinking, going inside their body, then piecing them up or enlarging, but that nearly killed her while doing it to that big lump from the Lizard League, who just firmed it and almost flexed her to death. And if he can do it, then you can bet tiger level or even wolf level threats to do the same. Nifty ability, but at this scale of force and durability from the monsters, there's a small chance she gets out of C-Class. No pun intended. You might be starting to notice that while the normal-ish heroes can pull off some stuff in their verse, inside of One Punch Man where most things can ignore their attacks and one-shot them, they are getting cooked. But what about Rexplode? We know he's not physically anything to write home about. A bunch of multiples who are basically peak normal human at best can beat him into submission. A Lizard League brute can bite his hand off fairly easily, so on and so forth. He'd be flimsy. However, an extra point over the previous two 2, he's got explosive projectiles on hand, which I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt with and say could be capable of defeating bulletproof monsters found in wolf and tiger threat levels. Now, this isn't a total game changer for him since it still wouldn't take a ton to overwhelm him in terms of speed and brute force, yet if we imagine that he can fell some weaker monsters with those explosions, it should stick him somewhere in B class as a hero who can effectively blow through weaker monsters' natural resilience. And speaking of blowing things up, Robot should see a lot of the same joy. He's got great versatility, many options of attack when given time to prepare, and is an intelligent type who can make the most of his approach. Between his smarts and his technology, he'd be able to vanquish numerous monsters of the wolf threat level and be a good help in taking down some tiger levels. Naturally, like most heroes of Earth in Invincible, his overalls doesn't make this easy for him. Against demon level threats, Robot is very likely to be blitzed and pulverized even despite having some half decent weapons on hand. But hey, maybe they'd still bring him into situations where strong minds are needed, since I bet him and Child Emperor could cook some pretty crazy stuff up together. I'm tossing and turning between B and A for Robot, since sometimes he looks kinda soft out there, and other times he's not so bad. Alright. Just barely A class for Robot because I'm going to allow extra credit for his intelligence, likely giving him higher use in certain situations, and for being able to leave a mark on Battle Beast. Can't forget about his big green girlfriend either. Monster Girl would be just fine against wolf and tiger level threats for the most part too. I wouldn't expect her to deal with some of the stiffer tiger threats, but she's definitely a notch above the likes of Rex and a singular robot in battle. So I can see her being a decent enough addition to A class for her overall strength. Just better hope she reverts back quick to looking like a girl before an S-class hero turns up, or she might accidentally turn into collateral if they get to acting before they get to talking. Yeah, that'd be a HR nightmare. Oliver is someone who has the potential to be in S-class for his Viltrumite attributes. However, for me, he's still too green as of the events of Season 3 to push him into this group just yet. And my mask will almost certainly agree. With Oliver's inexperience, and my mask will likely not be interested in pushing a child into the prestigious S-class when he already has such high standards for the adults. Added to this, Oliver's strength and speed, while a game changer in Invincible's Earth, will not be mind-blowing to the high standards of One Punch Man's world. Oliver is likely going to end up in some trouble with the stronger demon level threats due to being outpaced in hand-to-hand combat, and with their ruthless approach coupled in, Oliver probably won't be winning too many fights after skill-based matchmaking kicks in once he's done terrorizing wolf and tiger level threats. A my mask tier for Oliver, his powers aren't as developed as Mark's yet, which means he won't be styling on all the threats of this monster spawning world with the consistency a my mask would desire, and his age would only make a Mai's judgment harsher. Atom Eve is always an interesting one. By the way some fans explain how she used her powers in some hypothetical fights, you'd think she was the most powerful character in this series. But what fans imagine Atom Eve can do and what she actually does do are two different things. While her abilities are very cool, performance-wise she's just not the person some fans really would like her to be. She's taken a bunch of losses to people who wouldn't do much at all within One Punch Man, and even got outwitted by Multi-Pool in Season 3, which is not a great thing for her record either. Atom Eve certainly has potential with her powers, yet she's very vulnerable to physical damage when caught, and her speed isn't anything special inside of One Punch Man either. Frankly speaking, she'll get blitzed by most demon level monsters, and any direct hits will put her down very quickly. She'll do well against wolf and tiger threats, but that's the most of it. A class for Atom Eve. But what about what she did to Conquest? If your argument for Eve being S class revolves around her needing to shake hands with the Grim Reaper every time she fights a demon level monster just for a shot at victory, then that answers itself. Again though, even that aside, she's still way too flimsy and slow for decent demon level threats. Anyways, up next we have Bulletproof. This goddamn fraud. I don't know what this guy does except look like an idiot with powers. And I blame Donald for bigging up this bottle of orange Gatorade and making everyone believe he was actually on some kind of next level. As fast as Red Rush, Donald? I think Cecil needs to give you a software update because that's obviously a load of BS. I'll bite and accept that Bulletproof can maybe fly in a straight line across a long distance as fast as Red Rush can run, but anything other than that, and we're telling bedtime stories. I mean, look at this. He got tackled by a Reaniman that he even saw coming, for crying out loud. Red Rush would never. And don't try to say that Reaniman was also as fast as Red Rush 2, because we can see in the same shot shrinking rate and another Reaniman moving at normal pace. This guy has never replicated a Red Rush run around in combat from as far as I can remember, so the only time he's fighting anybody at that speed is when you close your eyes at night and dream about it. A class for Bullet Sponge, because I do understand he's actually pretty powerful. I'm just not going to give this guy props to a level he hasn't shown. And if Bulletproof is Invincible Light, then Black Samson is Bulletproof Light. I know this guy is supposed to be significantly stronger in the comics, but he's not given the same grace in the show, which is what this tier list is about. So unfortunately, he's taking even more L's in One Punch Man than he is in his own show. Still, he's a fairly decent superhuman overall, so I can imagine him getting the drop on the more manageable monsters, but when push comes to shove, this guy is getting ragdolled. B class for Black Samson, since he's always lacking. Maybe Lack Samson will fit him better. Who knows, maybe he'll kick on in season 4, but until then, he's here for me. Tech Jacket, funny one since we've never really seen him fight properly in this animated series. Maybe by the time this video actually comes out, we may have seen him do some stuff in season 4. Anyway, since I do know this character should be particularly powerful, and the show seems to be indicating so via defeating a Mark variant in the Invincible War, anyone who can 1v1 a Mark variant and leave them as a corpse is probably a safe enough bet to get into S-Class by that standard. A little bit of liberty with this one, since we're just going with the shot of him having beaten an alternate Mark, yet it should probably be fine. S-Class for Tech Jacket, strong durability, powerful weaponry, and I'm going to assume quick enough for mid-level demon threats. Speaking of quick, Red Rush is here, and from his perspective, it probably felt like a very long time waiting for his section. Anyway, as one of the fastest characters here, I'd say he has the speed requirement to make it into the S-Class category. However, I struggle to believe he's strong enough to defeat monsters with his level of power. Demon level threats, such as Deep Sea King, are roughly as fast as he is in terms of combat reactions, so Red Rush would certainly keep up, though the more pressing issue is that he will likely not cope well once someone like Deep Sea King smacks him one. Even at this middling stage of threat level demon, the striking power from these monsters can easily tear through metal shelters designed to withstand missile fire without a scratch. Replace that with Red Rush's body and it's likely not going to be a great outcome, especially when you try to imagine Red Rush's punches doing considerable damage to a monster like Deep Sea King. Red Rush can use his speed to deliver some strong hits, certainly, but they won't be enough to sit any respectable demon level threat down, and if Omni-Man can catch the speedster, then demon level monsters certainly will too. Am I masked for Red Rush, who has great speed to tangle with some demon level threats, but not enough stopping power to take down monsters expected of S-Class heroes on the regular. And if my mask sees you can't kill powerful monsters effectively despite being fast, you're not getting into S-Class. The poster boy for Invincible is last, and as I'm sure many of you can imagine, S-Class is a reasonable place for him to be. Season 1 and maybe even Season 2 Mark likely would have blundered his way out of S-Class, but going by the events of Season 3, he should be operating at a more consistent level where he's less likely to hold back or convince himself into an ass kicking. Mark is always kind of strange to rank because at face value he should be comfortably S-Class. However, performance wise, he does have a bad habit of underperforming or taking his eye off the ball. These aren't things to be ignored since they're indicators of how someone would represent themselves in character, and I think the more naive versions of Mark would probably get their butt kicked by a bunch of demon level monsters in One Punch Man, primarily due to their superior combat speeds and levels of force, which we've seen put Mark in trouble before. However, after the Conquest battle, I'm going to hope that Mark has learned his lesson enough for this to no longer be a problem, which should make him more reliably S-Class than he's ever been compared to previous iterations of himself within the Amazon Prime series. Whether or not this is true, we'll find out. However, I'll give the star of Ultramite the benefit of the doubt and say he squeezes himself into S-Class. Mark my words though, no pun intended, my mask would definitely block him if he kept throwing matches against monsters before reaching S-Class. So while it could be a My Mask tier for pre-Season 3 Mark, we'll cut him some slack and let him join Nolan in the S-Class this time around. What's the worst that could happen? Anyways, that's all I've got for today. I know there's more heroes of Invincible's Earth, but maybe I'll do a follow-up with the ones I missed and any others we get to see more of in Season 4. Leave a like and go catch up on some other videos of mine should it please you. See you soon.